Hey guys, welcome to my stream. My name is Michael S. Short. Today I'm going to give you my top 5 picks on ways you can evaluate what the best networking group for you is. So if you're interested in figuring out how to evaluate a networking group, stick around. That's what we're going to cover in today's video. My name is Mike Short. Michael S. Short is how you find me on YouTube. But Mike Short, I'm the founder of the Pro Business Support Community, and I help people to achieve higher levels of success. I'm here on this channel to help you guys raise your level of success in business, whatever that is. So today, what I wanted to talk about is networking groups. I get questions all the time about, Mike, how do I pick a networking group, or how do I network effectively in a networking group? So today we're going to talk a little bit about that, about what networking groups are, what some alternatives might be out there, and how do you pick the right group for you. So let's start off by defining a networking group. Typically, when we're talking about business networking, we're talking about a group of people that get together. Usually it's an exclusive arrangement where these folks get together and only one person in an industry is allowed to be in that group. And the purpose of the group getting together is to exchange leads and make introductions for each other. Now, there are some great networking groups out there nationally. There's a couple of big ones nationally. The oldest is called La Tip, and they started back in 1978. Now, their format is go around the room, basically talk about your business for 30 seconds or so, maybe a minute, and then ask for introductions. And folks that have an introduction will write the name of that introduction and the contact information on a piece of paper, pass it to you, and hopefully that's going to turn into a warm introduction where they'll actually go out of their way to make that introduction for you. The other big one is actually the biggest, I believe, in the world, and that's BNI, Business Networking International. And they follow that same format. They started back in 1985. Now, chambers of commerce also put together networking groups. They often call them leads groups or tips groups. And there are regional groups that do a similar thing. Here in Richmond, we have several. I'm in Richmond, Virginia, by the way. Here in Richmond, we have several groups that do that. I know there's a regional group up in Southern Maryland, Northern Virginia. There's a group out that I researched years ago that's out in the Midwest that covers the majority, I think, of Michigan, if I remember correctly. But these groups are out there. And then obviously there are groups of people that just get together and form their own groups. So now that's a networking group where the purpose of the group is to pass leads and referrals and make introductions, okay? There are also a couple of other kinds of groups that are out there. I'm not going to talk about those today, but one of those is a mastermind group. I just want to define them, but I'm not getting deep into it today. A mastermind group is a group of people that get together. Typically, it's a limited number of people. Could be 6, 8, 10 people, usually not more than 10. Occasionally, a group might go to 12. But that group tends to be exclusively people in the same industry or at the same level in their company. So a mastermind group could be photographers, as an example, but generally they would be photographers from different parts of the country that get together to mastermind with each other. Or they might be executives, or they might be entrepreneurs that are business owners. Okay, so a mastermind group tends to be people that have something like that specifically in common. And then what they do is they get together in a very closed environment. Typically, there are not visitors or guests to the meeting unless it's somebody they're evaluating, maybe for an open seat in a mastermind group. And they will really get into nuts and bolts. And in a mastermind group, one or more members at each meeting is what they call the hot seat. They're on the hot seat. And that is where that person takes anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour, depending on how that mastermind group is run. They are putting some issues in their business on the table. And really, they're there to get constructive criticism from peers of theirs. And I say constructive because in a mastermind group, what you need to understand is you're looking for brutal honesty and you're willing to be brutally honest with people. And if they're just off base, you let them know that. Now, in a mastermind group, typical mastermind group, Costs several $100s a month to even several $1,000s a month to belong to a mastermind group. If it is well curated and well moderated by somebody who knows what they're doing in that mastermind space. There are typically non-disclosure agreements and hold harmless agreements that are part of the mastermind group. They will often get into very sensitive information, including financials and hiring practices and personnel issues within that group that the members are not allowed to discuss outside of that group. So that's a mastermind group. Then there are some groups that are kind of a hybrid that take some elements of a mastermind group, some elements of a networking group, or maybe unique elements and combine those. The organization that I founded back in 2006 is more one of these kind of amalgamation of the best of both of those types of groups, and then some unique things to that group. Again, I'm not going to talk about that today. If you'd like information on that, though, feel free to shoot me an email. I'd be happy to talk with you one-on-one. You can reach me at michael@theprocommunity.com. So now let's get into, you're looking at a business networking group. How do you decide what group is right for you? So let's get into that. Number one, the single most important thing, whether it's a mastermind group, whether it's a networking group, whether it's a combination or a hybrid, or whether it's something else entirely different, the number one thing you need to look for is the people. Who are the people that are part of the group? Are these people that can bring value to you? And just as importantly, are these people that you can bring value to? Now, the value people bring can be completely different in each case. I'm going to talk about three different values that a person might bring to the group, and they could bring one, two, or all three of these. But the biggest thing that you need to look at with the people is, what is their heart? Is this a group of people that are there to serve other people and to help other people be successful? Or is this a group where people join simply for what they can take from the group, what they can take away, what they can take, right? Completely different scenarios. If you're a part of a group where everybody is there and their heart is to help each other, then you're being a part of that, philosophy, buying into that philosophy, means you're there too to help other people, and recognize that if everybody's there for that purpose, you're going to receive a lot of help as well. Completely different than if I put 10, 20, 30, 40, even 50 people around a table, and everybody's there just with the what's in it for me mindset, right? If you've got a group of people sitting around going, where's mine? Where's mine? Where's mine? You're not going to get the value out of the group that you could. Now, let me talk about those three types of values that people may bring to a networking group or any one of these groups, right? The mastermind group may be a little bit of an exception, because in that group, careful curation is super important. Putting the right people together that are at the right place, same place in their business, or there's some commonality that they really stress in curating in a proper mastermind group, okay? But when you're talking about a networking group or even one of these hybrid groups, in my opinion, there's three different characteristics that a person could bring value to a group. Number one, they could bring a large circle of influence. And specifically in a networking group, it is crucial that members bring a significant circle of influence when they come in, because the networking groups are about referrals and making introductions, okay? So that's the first thing somebody might bring to the group. The second thing somebody might bring to a group is a specific skill set or experience and expertise that can provide value. Now, often in the networking groups, that particular value may take place more in one-on-one meetings outside of the weekly or bi-weekly or monthly meeting, or whatever format the networking group you're looking at chooses to participate in, right? And it all kind of depends on something we'll talk a little bit later about, the system that an organization has. So number one, a member might bring a large circle of influence. Number two, a specific skill set, experience, or expertise. Or number three, you might just have somebody that has great energy, and that great energy brought to your team, brought to any group, can really change the dynamics of the group. And in my opinion, having that person with a high energy level is super important. Probably more important to have one, two, or three people like that in the group than either of the other two qualities somebody might bring. Because if you bring somebody who's super enthusiastic and positive and makes people feel better every time they're around this person, it helps bring the energy level of the group up and helps the group achieve more success. Okay, the second thing you want to look for as you're evaluating a networking group is this. Why are you joining? You need to understand before you join any group, what specifically do I want to get from joining this group, going to this event, whatever. Today, we're really talking about joining a group. So understand and know, what is it that you want to accomplish when you join a group? Now, that might change over time. So as you spend time in a group, your goals may change, or the value that you're seeking may change. But I think it's super important that you know before you join, what is it that you want to accomplish? What is it that is going to make this valuable for you? Is it a specific dollar amount of business? Is it developing a certain skill set? Public speaking is a great example. If you want to get good at public speaking, there's great places to do that. You can, if you want to speak professionally, join the National Speakers Association. You can join a Toastmasters club where they'll really hone some of those skills. I think a networking group is a great place to go if that's a skill you need to develop, is because what they do is when they get together, you have a format to follow, a template. It's easy to figure out what to say, and it gets you more comfortable speaking in front of people. Maybe what you're looking for is to develop and deepen relationships or find a mentor. It really, in some cases, somebody's goal might be, I'm super successful where I am, and my goal is I just want to give back to others, okay? But you need to know before you join a networking group, what specifically do you want to accomplish by joining that group? What's the third thing you need to think about? I think it's important for you to evaluate the system that the group uses and what rules they have, and know that ahead of time, right? There are groups out there that have attendance requirements. You need to know, what are those attendance requirements? What happens if you can't meet those attendance requirements or training requirements? There are groups out there that their philosophy is about loyalty. So if you're looking for a group of people where part of the core philosophy of that organization or that group is that we pass referrals to the people that are in our group and not outside the group. In other words, if somebody's in our group that's a realtor, they get the real estate referrals that we have, period. Okay. If that's something you're looking for, you need to know that up front. Those groups also typically, I know in at least one, I think two different organizations that I'm familiar with, they say, look, if you belong to us because we're about loyalty, you can't join another networking group or another industry exclusive group. So before you join a group, do your best to evaluate what is the system that they use and what are the rules and the requirements of membership. Now, guys, one of the reasons to join an established networking group is that they have already developed systems that work. So we're going to talk a little bit at the end of this about paying for a networking group versus starting your own or joining a free group. And there's benefits and drawbacks to both. The next thing that you want to evaluate is, what is the commitment level of the members of the group? You can find different groups within the same organization, if it's a multi-chapter organization, and you visit one group and everybody there is super committed. They make being at their meeting a priority, not sending a substitute, not blowing a meeting off because a client called them, but they make it a priority. Quite frankly, one of the members of my group, I wish everybody had this, but he's got an assistant in his office, and his assistant manages his calendar. So because he's got the meeting of the group that he belongs to blocked off on his calendar, her assistant never schedules anything else in that time slot. The challenge for a lot of people when they join a group is they manage their own calendar. And when somebody calls and has a need and wants to meet with them, they now have to make a decision. Should I stick with my existing commitment for my networking group or other group, or should I go meet with this client? Guys, I got to tell you, in my opinion, for a networking group or a mastermind group or a hybrid organization to work for you, you have got to make it a priority. It's got to be like a meeting with $1 million client. And if you wouldn't reschedule a meeting with $1 million client, don't schedule anything else. Look, in 37 years of being an entrepreneur, I have never lost a piece of business because I said, hey, Joe, I can't meet with you on Tuesday at 2 o'clock because I've got another appointment, but I have these times available. And you have to be willing to do that. But as you evaluate a group, what is their level of commitment? Do they have that level of commitment toward the group? Now, look, if you're not a committed person, then don't look for a group that expects that, right? You need to find something that's a good match for you. But if you really want to maximize the value you get out of a group like this, commitment is super important. So, hey, I want to thank Kathy Myers and Ted Davis for showing up live. It's great to see you guys here. So thanks so much for watching. Let's get to number 5. What is the 5th thing I think you need to look for when you're evaluating a networking group? And that is, what are the results or the value received by members of the group? You got to be careful with this one, okay? There are groups out there that will put dollars out, and I got to be honest with you, the vast majority of the time, those numbers are not accurately reflected, and they're designed to suck people in and to recruit people. If you are being heavily recruited from your initial visit, I think you need to take a step back and really evaluate, just make sure you put this group through a proper evaluation. So how are results calculated? Well, in some cases, the networking groups will simply share, this year we passed X $1,000 of business. Now you need to do your due diligence when that type of thing is presented, because number one, you need to find out, is that gross sales and revenue, or is that commission in pocket? And then you have to really dig in deeper. So of that, if it's commission in pocket or gross sales, how is that broken down? Here's why that's super important. I can tell you, years ago, I was part of a large networking group in the area that I live in, multiple chapters of the group. And when I mentored groups, I can remember there was a particular group and they passed these numbers around. And I was like, holy cow, this is phenomenal. But then I started thinking about it. And I asked the leadership of that particular group, hey, these numbers that you're sharing, I said, is this gross sales or is this commission and money that went into members' pockets? And they said, oh, Mike, this is money that went into members' pockets. I was like, oh my gosh, that's terrific. And then I quickly divided by the number of members. And I said, let me make sure that I understand what you're saying. So on average, given the numbers that you were sharing, every member of this team on average made $50,000 just from referrals from this group so far this year. Well, I don't know about that, right? So as I dug in, I found out that this particular group was not necessarily accurately reflecting what was really happening. The other thing that you want to do is you want to find out, what's the breakdown of that? Because in my experience, a lot of times you may find 2 or 3 or 4 people that are able to do what I call transactional referrals. In other words, the realtor refers somebody to the mortgage lender, who then does the mortgage, who then refers to the insurance agent, who writes the insurance on the property so that it can get the mortgage, so that the realtor can get paid. And then the home inspector gets pulled in there. And you may find a little small group of people that have kind of formed their own super successful transactional referral group within the larger group. And guys, that is super if that happens. I'm not knocking that at all. But if you find that a group is passing $100,000 of business and 70,000 of it is with 4 or 5 people, and 30,000 is spread out between 20 or 30 people, right? Then they're not getting the same value. So you've got to understand, if I join this group, is it worth my time and the cost, whether that's a membership fee, maybe the group meets over lunch and you're expected to buy lunch every week. There might be additional fees for training and courses and that type of thing. So if your expenditure is $1,000 a year, and if you're not in that group, the average return is $1,000 a year, your net for being involved in that group was 0. Going back to commitment, that's an issue a lot of groups have, is people see a handful of people making a lot of money, and then they're there going, if they can do it, I can do it. And they're kind of hoping for scraps. And when they go for 3, 4, 5 meetings in a row and haven't gotten a referral or an introduction, and now a client calls them and says, hey, can we meet on Wednesday at noon? Guess what happens to their commitment level? Well, gee, I haven't gotten anything from my group in a month, in 2 months, in 3 months. Yes, I'll meet with you, right? So it's important that you understand, what are the results that the team has, or what is the value that people get? Now, value is not always monetary, but I think it's important that as you meet with people, and you should meet with members of the group you're considering before you join, ask them, what's the value you've gotten out of your being a member of this group, right? Whether it's a dollar amount, and they don't have to be specific. They can just say, look, for me, it's an increase in sales. I've increased my sales 30%. Boy, that would be great, right? But for somebody else, it might be, well, I've gotten advice from people that are in the group that have helped me with employee issues, or challenges with my boss, or developing a better marketing plan. And sometimes that takes place outside. Actually, with networking groups, those types of things mostly take place outside of the meeting, not during the meeting. So let me touch on real quickly some things to consider, because there are groups out there that cost hundreds of dollars a year, and there are groups out there that are 100% free, and there are groups out there that may have a cost in addition to a membership cost, like some chambers of commerce that have leads groups or tips groups. Often, if you're going to join one of those groups on top of your chamber membership, that's an additional cost, okay? Why would you pay for a membership versus starting your own group where there was no membership, or joining a free group? Well, there's a few advantages that I think you've got either way. Obviously, from a strictly financial standpoint, a free group is appealing, right? What I have found, though, is people's level of commitment is often tied to having something invested in the group. And if there's no financial investment, a lot of times people's commitment's not there. If you can find a group of experienced and committed people, and that group has developed a system and it's absolutely free, I say go for it. Why not? Right? You can only benefit if they've got those things in place. However, if you're looking at a paid group, you hopefully, one of the things you should look for is that there are professional employees, people, in my opinion, they ought to be doing it full time. This should be their full-time vocation. And if this isn't, then it is directly related, like coaching and training and those types of things. but you need to have somebody there that can provide support and coaching for both groups, entire groups, and individual members of the group. So that, in my opinion, can be a big benefit to a paid group, is this coaching and training. And in my opinion, it should be somebody that does it full time, not somebody that has networking groups as a side gig to another full-time thing, right? Because really, in most cases, those are probably experienced networkers, and they're trying to make a few extra bucks by doing something in a part-time basis. I don't begrudge anybody for doing that. That's great. And if they can bring the value to their membership and they're directly and personally involved, or they have employees that this is what their employees do, then I think that's great. But so look at what is the coaching and the training that you get. Another benefit of a paid group is if there's an issue with a member, guess what? You can go to the paid staff or director or executive director or owner or mentor or whatever the title might be, and let them come in and address issues and try and coach people to improve. Or ultimately, if they have to, they can be the bad guy instead of somebody in the group being the bad guy, and ask them to leave or to say to enforce a policy. Remember, we talked about rules and policies and systems earlier. Okay. Another benefit of a paid organization can be that it's part of a larger community where you're not just on an island with a group of people hoping that you make it, but you're part of a network of these groups that can support each other, and you can build relationships kind of throughout the organization. And then the last thing that I would say about all groups, whether they're paid or they're free, is every group, in my experience, and I've been doing this networking thing now in official groups for close to 20 years, but I've networked for 30 some years now, right? Since my first stint with the Blacksburg Chamber of Commerce in the small town of Blacksburg, Virginia, where Virginia Tech is. And back in those days, I owned a yogurt franchise. I was one of 3 owners. There was a majority owner, and then 2 of us were minority owners. But I was fortunate enough to be involved and learn a lot of lessons. And that was where I had my first experience with the Chamber of Commerce and networking. But here's one thing all groups have in common. They all have peaks and valleys. There are times when things are going great. The membership numbers are up to whatever you want them to be, or they're growing. There are some groups that have no limit on the number of people that join their individual groups. I have other thoughts on that, but that's for another video, okay? But things are going well. They're getting results. The membership is growing, or it's at or near capacity. Things are fantastic. And then every group will go through valleys where they lose membership, or energy starts to wane, or people's businesses are just performing poorly, or people aren't living up to the commitment that they need to maximize the value of the networking group. One of the things that I believe strongly in is if you have a good career, this is what I do, is coach these teams type of person or people, they can help minimize the valleys so you can get back to the peaks even quicker. So guys, I hope this is helpful for you. I just wanted to give you some ideas. I get asked all the time about networking groups. I think networking groups are great, but I also think you ought to look at alternatives out there as well as you're evaluating what the right fit for you is. That could be a mastermind group. If you need information on mastermind groups, shoot me an email. I'll try to get you some information on some of those. And you know, we probably in the next 6 to 12 months will be looking to launch our own executive mastermind groups. But shoot me an email. You can reach me again. Here's my email, michael@theprocommunity.com. Would love to hear your questions. Also, don't forget, subscribe and hit that bell button so you'll get noticed every time we post a video or we go live. If you can hit the subscribe button and the bell button below, leave a like, thumbs up, and a comment with any questions, or if I've missed something that you think is really important as you look into and evaluate a networking group, let me know. Put it in the comments. I'd be really curious to hear what you guys have to say. Also, if you find value in this, guys, you can support the organization. And the way you can support the organization is we have what's called a Patreon channel, where our community can support us financially to help us produce this content for you. So if you found value, consider becoming a patron at Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/Michael S. Short. That would be terrific. And again, guys, just really glad that you could join us today. Don't forget, subscribe, hit the bell button, smash the like, leave me your thoughts on what you look for in a networking group. And if you found value in this, don't forget to support the channel. I'm going to put some links up here to some other videos we have that you may find useful. You won't see that in the live stream, but those of you that are watching the replay will see those. And thanks so much for watching. I appreciate you guys. Let me know what I can do to help. Again, Mike Short. Thanks for tuning in. Okay. Take care, everybody. I will see you next week on Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. We go live every Tuesday, 3 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. All right, everybody. Take care. Have a great week.